So in this video, I'm going to create a no-code directory. So it's going to be a website that will contain a list of no-code tools, but also that will allow users to list their own no-code projects and specify which tools they've used to create those projects. So this is the basic idea of the project. It will probably also have a blog and maybe content and resources to help people get started using no-code. So the title of the website or the project is going to be NoCoder.Space. So NoCoder.Space. And we can create an empty project. So I'm going to build the whole platform using sketch.io. So I'm going to create this project. And we're going to start with creating a header. So for that, maybe we can start using the preset. So I'm going to probably use this one. So I'm going to drop it right here. And here I'm going to rename this these menus. So the first one is going to be maybe the directory. So we're going to call it, or tools. It's going to be the list of tools. Then we will have maybe the project or maybe showcase. And for now it's going to be it. So we're going to remove the other elements from the menu. I'm going to set this link, showcase, and I will have to create a logo. For that, maybe we could use Photopea, which is a web version of Photoshop. So we can create a logo quickly in here. So I'm going to give it a size, maybe 400 pixels by 200 pixels, or maybe even more. Yeah, maybe something like this, it should be okay. All right, and the title is NoCoder.Space. All right, we're gonna increase the size here. I'm going to center everything. And now maybe we can start looking for some fonts, so something that will look good. All right, so what do we have? Maybe I want something more in the display. Yeah, so I need to find a cool font. So let's look through these fonts. Yeah, this one is a little bit too much. This one too. So I really just want a cool, maybe I think a modern font. Still not. So I actually liked, I think it was this one. So let's keep this name in mind, but still we need to just look a little bit more. Maybe we can find something better. this one too is good. So I'm just gonna highlight them. Yeah, I can't really highlight them, but still. Alright, so there's this one and there's this one. I'm not sure yet which one is better. Maybe I'm also gonna go to Google Fonts. They have a really neat selection of fonts and you can easily search through these fonts. So NoCoder.Space. And I'm gonna increase the size, something like this. And now I'm gonna go through the categories. So remove these. Yeah, so maybe something like this. Maybe I'm gonna increase the thickness. So maybe something like this. So this one is cool, even the name is cool. This one too. Yeah, I think I really like this one. It's it sounds fun. NoCoder.Space. So the name is Coda, so maybe we can find it here. This one. Alright, so let's move ahead and let's choose this font. So I'm going to recenter everything. Perfect. So this can be our font. Free transform, just going to increase the size a little bit. Alright, so this is going to be our logo. We can also make a few variations. So I'm gonna first save this. Yeah, I'm actually gonna put it in white, or the text is gonna be in white, something like this. And now I can export as a PNG file, just like this. Alright, and as I said, we're gonna create just another variation, so new, and this one is gonna be a square, and it's gonna be NCS, and we're gonna, yeah, NCS, we're gonna disable the background, and we're going to increase the size of this text. Alright, and we can center everything as usual. And for this one, maybe we can add a gradient. So I'm gonna go to a really cool site called Flat UI Colors. And I'm gonna find maybe a palette. This one sounds cool. So this is going to be the background of the website. So I'm going to copy that. Alright. So we can choose this grayish blue and maybe this turquoise. So maybe this could be our second color for the website. And now we can create a background. All right. looks good. So one last thing, maybe we can either change the color of the text. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it the way it was, so white, but maybe I can add a tiny shadow like this. Perfect. Maybe we can decrease the color just like this. All right. So this is gonna be our icon for the logo. So we can save this as well. And I can even save the PSD files if we ever want to use them in the future. Anyway, so now we can go back to our website. So I did say that I'm gonna use this color as the background. So I'm gonna select the body element. I'm gonna go to the background color and I'm gonna copy the hex color. So now it's opacity of 0. So I'm gonna move the opacity to 100%. And I'm gonna change the color of the text to be white by default. Perfect. Now let's change the logo. So I'm gonna upload our logo. So it was this one. And we're going to use this as our logo. All right. And maybe I could resize this image so that it fits the logo a little bit more. So 200 pixels, just like this. And I can save it once again. So let's remove this image and let's upload the new one. Just like this. Perfect. Now let's choose a font for our website. So I like Open Sans. There's a few different ones. So this one I like too. So this is a font that is applied on the header element. So we're going to remove that. So now it's using the font that it has inherited. And now we're also going to use this color that I chose here for the buttons. Just like that. And yep, so maybe we can increase the weight and maybe we can decrease the size of the text a tiny bit and increase a little bit the margins, the inner margins. Right now we also need to set the color for the hover state. So when the element is hovered, the new color, maybe we can just take this one right away. All right, perfect. And maybe when it's clicked, so pressed, we can set it to something like this. All right. Next, so now we have our header right here. We can save, we can preview our page. So this is our website. We have 2 pages that we'll have to create. I will go to the settings and I will upload the icons that I've just created here. So this image and here as well. All right, and for the address bar, we're gonna use the same color as the background. All right, so we can save, we can refresh the page and notice the icon, it should update. So this is our new icon and let's continue. So I'm gonna close this and let's continue. Alright, so this is gonna be our main content. So let's add maybe a page element like this, and this is gonna be our footer. So we can do something very simple, just like this. Now the body element should be a flex element, just like this, just like that. And this one will flex automatically, will grow to take this full area. Now let's change the image here. All right. Now the width of the image is 160 pixels, so let's do 200 like this, and we can change these maybe later. So let's do it quickly here. So the first one is tools, and the second one is showcase. All right. Now maybe we can change the background of this as well. Maybe I think we can just take the same color as the background, as the body element, and just push it a little bit to be darker. Yeah, so this is the border. We need to cancel what we've done. It's the background in here. So something just like this. All right. Actually, I'm even gonna change it on the body element as well. So I prefer this color. So let's go to the body element and let's change it to this. And for the footer, we're gonna put it even darker, just like this. All right. So we can refresh the page, and now we have a basic template for our project, and we can get started. So the way it's gonna work is we first need to create both our pages, and since we're gonna reuse the header and the footer elements, we're gonna change them, we're gonna convert them into components. So this is the header, the content, and the footer. So we're gonna create components. So this is gonna be the header component, and we're gonna be able to reuse it throughout the website. And this is for the footer. So now when we create a new page, let's call it tools. All right, we create this new page, and now we can drag the header from here and the footer as well, and we can add maybe the page element as well. So let's just drag it here. Yeah, so the page element was already dragged in the past, so we can just skip that step, just like this. All right, so now we have the page, so the tools page. And now what we want is to create a showcase page. Just like this. And we do the same thing, we drag the header, we can drag a div block, and we drag the footer. The div block is gonna be a content wrapper, and inside of it we're gonna add another div block with the content inner, and inside of it we're gonna add a heading one, and we're gonna give it the content title class. So this is basically the same thing as this. All right, we can refresh the page. So now this is the tools page, showcase, tools, and the home page. So let's go back to the home page. Let's call it welcome. Let's go to showcase, and let's call it showcase. So So now let's start and do the serious stuff, and that is to create our data models. So we're going to store a list of tools that we want to have in our website, and for that we're going to create a data model. We're going to call it tools, just like this. And the tools data model is going to have a few fields in it. So the first one is going to be the name field, and that is the name of the tool. Default value, maybe we can do something like sketch.io. So this is maybe this is not the default value, maybe this is the placeholder. And this is a required field, and we can make this searchable so that people can search through the tools and find by name. So this is searchable. So this is the name field. Then we have the handle field. This should be generated by our app. So this should not be something that the user might have to type by themselves, but it's going to help for SEO. So it's going to be the little name that will display in the URL to find and to target our tool. So we can save the handle. Then we have the status. So the status of the entry in the database. So the first one is draft. So draft. And the internal value is draft. So this is what should show in the database. So this is the internal value, and this is the value that shows in the UI. And now we'll also have one which is active or published. And this way, in the website, we're only going to show the entries or the tools that are published. If we add a section that allows people to suggest a tool, it will be added to the database as a draft, and then we can review that and publish the tool after editing the fields and making sure everything looks good. And the default value is a draft, and this is a required field. And we're going to index it because we're using this. The index is when you make database queries. So when you request in the database the list of tools, we want to filter by status. So we need to index this to improve performance. After the status, maybe we can add an image, and that is going to be the logo. So the logo of our tool, and this could be required or maybe not. So we're not gonna require it for now. So this is the logo. Then we have maybe we can add a short description. And this should be required. And we can save. Now let's double check here. Yeah. Right, so then we have the long description. Just like this, and this is gonna be required as well. And we can save. And then we have so maybe the URL of the tool, and this is required as well. And then maybe we can add a categories drop down, or maybe this should be a array of texts or array of handles. We can choose which one we want. So maybe we can do array of handles, and we will create a few categories, and the user is going to be able to filter them by handle. So They're gonna say this tool is for building websites, another category could be for building apps, another one for automation, and so on. And this should be indexed and searchable so that we can filter. Index is for filtering by category. Now searchable is not really necessary, but we can still have it here. And then maybe we can have an array of images, and that could be for the screenshots. Just like this. And now we can save. Now there's something I noticed is that the long description should be a multi-line text, not a single text field. So we can remove it and add it again. So let's add it again as a multi-line text field instead. Alright, and this should be required, and this should also be indexed and searchable so that we can search for the keywords that are in this field. And same should be for the short description. So here it should be indexed and searchable. So we can save, and now we can save this whole the whole project. Now of course nothing will update on the website because we haven't changed the UI yet, but what we can do is we could try to add maybe some entries. So let's add an entry. So maybe we can add an entry for sketch.io. So sketch.io, and this could be a published entry. Now we can upload the logo, so let's get the logo. Yeah, so I should actually get the a square logo instead. So let's see if we can find one quickly. So here I found a large version of the logo and we can upload it here. So I'm gonna drag it right here, and let's write a description. For now I'm just gonna write anything. Alright, and the URL is this one. Now we could add some categories. So the first one could be app builder, website builder, what else? We could add a few more later, but for now we're just gonna keep it this way. Now we could maybe take a screenshot. So maybe we could try a demo, and just let's take the calculator, actually the demo of the calculator, so we can take this screenshot. Yeah, I'm just gonna take a screenshot. So just like this. Let's go to Photo P. Let's create a new project. Just like this. Okay, so this is a first screenshot, and maybe we can take a screenshot of the home page. So here's another one. Just like this. And this is gonna be the second screenshot. Alright, so let's export this image as a JPEG. maybe we can resize it to maybe something smaller. So something like this. We save, and same for this page. Just like that. All right, so now we have the two screenshots, so we can upload them right here. And now we can create this entry. All right, so we have added this entry, and we can now maybe try to populate the page with the entry. Actually, we're gonna add maybe another one. So maybe we could add an entry for maybe bubble. This one is going to be published as well. So let's get the logo of bubble. So let's copy this image on Photopea. Let's put it in a square. Now let's resize this a little bit. Free transform. Just like this. And we can center it. Just like that. Alright, so now we can export that. Okay. And we can have maybe some screenshots. So let's save this image. Alright, so here we have the logo. And here we have the screenshot. Alright, we put the URL here. So this one is a website builder. And we can hit the create button. Alright, so now we have two entries and we can already start populating the page and seeing how it works. So here we go to the tools page, and what we're going to do is that we're going to retrieve the data from the database using the data retriever module. So the database is the tools database, and we want a filter, and that filter is the status of the entry. So the entry should be published. We want to maybe retrieve the last 100 items, and we can sort them by date created in descending order. So the latest tools are shown first, just like that. So now we connect this like this, and now we need to save the entries into a variable. So we create a variable, we're gonna call it tools, just like that. We can also add the variable in the page state, so tools, it's gonna be a yes or no, and we're gonna leave it that way. It's gonna be overwritten by the page controller here by the actual variable that contains the list of tools we have in our page. Alright, so now we want to list the tools in this page. So we can add a div block. I'm gonna put it inside the content element here. Now this div block, we're gonna name it tools wrapper. Alright, it's gonna be maybe a flex item, and we can align things to the center. Yeah, just like this, and we can wrap the items. Alright, now we're gonna add some padding like this, so maybe 10 pixels everywhere. And now inside of this tool, we want to add another block for a specific tool. So tools, or we're just gonna call it tool card. And now we want to add, for example, the image or the logo of the tool right here. So this is going to be the logo. Then we want to add the name of the tool. So let's add it here, and we're gonna rearrange everything later. And we also want to add the short description here. All right. So we have the name of the tool and the short description. Maybe we can add also a link to the website. So we're gonna add an icon inside of the link. The icon is gonna be the external link icon. All right, and now we can start working on this card. So in the future, we could also like add more fields to the tools database. For example, we could have maybe a review or a stars field, so we can give some rating to the tool, and that way we can show the rating for that tool. We can also add more fields. For example, is this tool for free? Does it have a free version? And that way we can add more information to the card, and we can even add some filters so that the visitors can see or can filter and see only, for example, the free tools and so on, or the tools with some stars. Alright, so this is going to be the card. The card is going to be maybe a grid layout, and it will have 2 columns and maybe a few rows. So we're gonna add 1 row here and another row here. Now for the image, it should take 2 rows. So row span, it's gonna span over 2 rows, just like this. And now for the columns, what we can do is have the heading. We can add maybe another column. So we have 3 columns, and or maybe we can just stay with 2 columns and put the heading and the icon in the same in a block. That way they can be on the same line. So let's add this here, and let's arrange everything just like this. All right, so now we have the heading, and we can change the margins. Now for this heading, we're gonna change it to be a flex element, just like this. We want to align everything to the center as always. And now for this element, so we don't want them to have half the height each. We want maybe the first one to be auto, and the second one should have the full height. Now for the image, you see that it has collapsed, and actually this is not the column. It should be on the row. So the row should have a height of auto, just like this. And now we can maybe add some radius on the image. So maybe something like this, and we can keep on improving our card. Okay, and now we can continue and add maybe some margin between the heading 2 and the icon. So we can give them some classes. So this one, it could be, well, the image, it should be tool card image or logo. This is tool card title. and this is tool card description. Alright, so we can already add some margins. So this should be maybe 5 pixels, a margin of 5 pixels. We can also select the card and add a space, a gap between the columns, so maybe 10 pixels, just like this. Alright, and then we could maybe add some style to the card itself. So this could be maybe some background, maybe something like this, and of course more inner margin. Right, and some box radius, so 10 pixels should be alright. Alright, and now we can maybe change the way this card behaves. So maybe we can give it a size, probably a size of well, what we can do is we can select the parent element and we can remove the inner margin, we don't need it anymore, and we can change it from a flex item. Instead, what we can do is use the grid element instead, and this could be, so 3 columns, and the rows should be automatic. So autofill or autofit. The card should have maybe a size, a percentage. Alright, so how can we divide this into 3 columns? So for some reason this doesn't work. So it should be auto, so that they are the equal size. So for some reason it still doesn't work. So yeah, maybe we could. Alright, now it works. I don't know what's happened, but now it works. Alright, so now we have this grid that is divided in 3, and we can add some gaps, so maybe 20 pixels, something like this. Alright, and now this image we could make it a little bit smaller, so maybe the width could be maybe 40% or 80%. Or actually we can keep it at 100%. And for the card element, so the columns, this one should be maybe in either a percentage, so this is 50 and this is 30%, so we could do percentage just like this. Alright, so now we've added this card, but of course if we go back to the website and refresh the page, it's just a there's nothing crazy about it. So what we need to do is to populate the card using the tools variable that we've retrieved there. So to do that, it's very easy. You click on the div block element, and in the loop variable we can loop through the tools variable, and for each loop we're going to use the tool element. So now it's going to loop through the tools variable, and for each one of them it's going to generate a card element like this one, and it's going to contain the information about that card, about that tool, in the tool variable. So what we can do now is select the elements inside of this card, inside of the loop, and we can link them to the variable. So this is the heading, this should be the title. So we're gonna link this to the tool.title. Same for this. So this is gonna be tool.short description. Because in our database, the field that we want to display here is the short dash description field. You can see it right here. So short dash description. And the same thing for the image. So tool.logo. We can save and we can refresh the page. So for some reason it didn't work. So let's try to debug this and understand why it doesn't work. So as we said, we're looping through the tools variable, and here we are retrieving the information from the data, from the database, from the tools data model, and we're choosing the entries that have the status as published. All right. Now if we go to the database, so these two elements, these two entries already have the status as published, so it should work. Now I notice here the name, it should be name instead of title, so we can correct that, but it still won't solve our problem. So we can correct this. This is tool.name, but this still doesn't solve our problem. All right. And now when we refresh, we see that the cards were retrieved, but here we notice that the logo can be a little bit too large, so we need to specify a maximum width for that logo. So here the image, we're going to set a width of, we can try maybe 100%. I'm not sure it's gonna work, but we can give it a try. So let's save. Yeah, so it does work. So the width is 100% of the area it has. And you see here we have bubble.io and we have sketch.io in here, and they're ordered in reverse. So this one was the first one that was added, and this one was the last one that was added to the database. Now we can set the links here. Right now the links lead to the homepage of our website, so we need to link to the actual URL of these tools. So here I'm gonna select the link, not the icon, so the parent of the icon, and I'm gonna link it to the tool.url, and we can save and we can refresh, and now you see that it's bubble.io and it's sketch.io. Perfect. So we've already done a first step for this project. Now the second one is that we need to create the pages for each and every tool. For that, we first need to make this whole card clickable, and then we need to redirect to a page for this specific card. So first let's make this a clickable element. Now you could make it a link to a different page, but here since we have a link inside, we are not able to put a link inside of link, so we're gonna use a kind of a hack to make it work. So first I'm just gonna change the cursor of this element to a pointer so that the user can see that it's clickable. Now when it's hovered, we want to change the background to be a little bit lighter, so just like this, so that you know that it's clickable. And now we're going to attach a handle, the handle of the tool, to this element. So we're gonna add a data entry. So this is, we're going to call it handle. So this is a way to attach data to the element without making it visible in the UI. So we're attaching a data, the ID of the data is handle, and we're going to link it to the tool.handle. So now each one of these elements is going to have a data that is attached to them. This one is going to be the handle of bubble, which was bubble-io, and this one was sketch-io. So now that is done, we can add a click action on this element, and what we want to do is that when the element is clicked, we want to redirect to the page of that tool. So we need to use the redirect module, and it's going to be something like tool dash, and here we'll have the handle for that tool. So we need to combine two things. So we're going to go to string or text, and we are going to concatenate two values. The first one is tool dash, and the second one is the handle of the element. So the data that we've just added to the element. So we go to element operations, get data, and the name of the entry is handle. The element is the current element, so the one we're working on, and we're going to add this here. So it's going to be slash tool dash and then the handle of this project or of this tool, and we're going to redirect to this URL that we're building here. All right, so we can save, we can refresh the page, and now you see this is the URL right now, so tools. Now if I click on sketch here, it goes to tool dash, and then we have the handle of this specific tool. So now we need to create a new page, and it's going to be for these specific tools. So we're going to call it tool, and now the URL is tool dash, and now this is a dynamic page. So depending on which tool it is, the URL is going to be different. So what we need to do is add an asterisk here, and this will mean and will indicate to Sketch that this could be any value that the user can type in or that we can set. So we can save, and now we go to the tool page. We can add our components, so the header, the footer, and then we had a div right here, and it was content wrapper, inside of it another div, and that one was content inner, and inside of it we had another heading one, and that one was content title. And let's move this between the header and footer. All right, and now this is the tool page. Now if we refresh, if we click on this, and now it's going to the tool page, but now we need to retrieve this specific tool, and we need to retrieve it based on this handle right here. Now in the page controller, you see that we have here the URL match1. So the match is basically the asterisk, so it's sketch-io. So this is the handle of the tool we're working on right now. So we go to the database, data retriever, and now we want to retrieve a specific tool, a tool that has a specific handle, and that handle should be equal not to a specific value that we can type in here, but to an input. So this is a dynamic value. But on top of that, we also want to make sure that the element is visible, so it's published. Now you only want to retrieve a single element, and we can click on OK. Now since we've put input here, we see that an input here has appeared. So this means that we want to match this handle right here. So this is the handle. And as I said, we're taking the handle from the URL just like this. All right, so now we have retrieved the tool, so we can set a variable. and that variable is going to be tool, and the value is going to be the entry that we've just retrieved. Now, if we type something random in here, we should not try to display that page. So we should show a 404 error basically. So we need to check that this entry exists. So when we retrieve the entry from the database, we need to check if that was successful or not. So we need to add a condition, and the condition is that this single entry exists. Now, if it exists, we can set the variable. Otherwise, we do nothing. All right. So now we can maybe we can duplicate maybe this content inner, and we can type in here error 404, and then maybe we can add another text. This tool doesn't exist. All right. And we also need to add a variable in the page state called tool, and by default it's going to be an unchecked value, so a false, a no. And what we need to do is that this 404 error should render conditionally when a variable is false. What's that variable? It's the tool variable, and in this case this block should render when a specific variable is true, and that variable is the tool variable. So now we can save and we can refresh. So now you see that the sketch-io exists, so this renders, and if we type in something random, it gives us a 404 error. We can maybe center this just like this. All right. So now we need to build this page. So let's link this heading to the actual name of the tool. So tool.name. We can refresh the page and we can go back to the sketch.io and we can refresh this page. And now you see that the name of the tool that was retrieved from the database based on this handle was successfully retrieved and has populated the page. Now what we need to do is to keep filling this page with the content from the database. So we can maybe start by adding the long description, or maybe let's start with the short description of the tool. We can add it right here. Then we could have maybe a paragraph that would contain the long description, and of course we also need to probably have maybe the screenshots that were taken for our for this tool. So let's add the element here. Now this is the title, we've already done that. This is the short description, so let's link it to tool.short description, just like this. And this one is tool.long description, and this one is going to be a loop, and we're going to loop through the screenshots of our page. So we can loop this variable. The variable is tool.screenshots, and we're gonna call the variable screenshot, and the screenshot, we're just gonna use it right here. So this is gonna be the URL of the image of the screenshot. All right, now we can stylize this page a little bit. So we can maybe change this font. So this one is source sans. Maybe we can reset it to use the same one as the page. This one should be centered. Maybe we can reduce the weight like this. And maybe we can have a negative margin on top, or maybe this one could have a 0 margin. So we can add a class. We're gonna call it tool title, and we can set a margin of 0. This one is going to be tool dash short description, and we can add a margin below. Now for the screenshot, we're going to put it inside of a div block. So we can put a div block right here. And let's put the screenshot, the image, inside of the div block. Now the div block should maybe be a flex item, and we want to wrap the items, and we want to center everything just like this, and justify it to the center. Now as for the image, we want the image to have a maximum size of maybe in percentage, it could be maybe something like let's say 30%. So this is the maximum width of the image. All right, and here we can remove these margins and instead add a outer margin to the top, just like this. Now these images, we could actually put them inside of a link. So I'm gonna change this. Let's reset this. So instead I'm gonna add a link. So link block, and inside of that link we're gonna put the image. And the link is going to be the element that will have the loop. So tool.screenshots, and here the variable is screenshot. And we're going to link the link property to the URL of the image. So screenshot.url, just like this. Now this link block should have the maximum width of 33% or 30%. So this is not for all link elements, so let's reset this. We want to add a new class, so tool screenshot link. All right, and this will have a width of 30%. Well, this is gonna have we actually wanted to fill the whole area. And we can change a few properties of the image. We can give it a width of 100%. All right, and we can refresh the page, preview, and see where we're at right now. All right, so this is the title, this is the short description, and this is the long description. Now the screenshots are not showing up, so let's debug this. So here we have screenshots, and if we look at our entry, it does have screenshots. So the variable is properly linked, it's the screenshot variable. And now we see that it works. So we need to further adjust the styling of the elements. So for the screenshots, we could add a margin between the elements. So we can add maybe 10 pixels of margin, just like this. All right, it looks already better. We can also add a border radius on the image. just like this. All right. And when we click on the images, it redirects to the actual full-size image. Okay, and now we can maybe add a link to the actual website for this tool. So maybe a link button. We can call it visit website or something similar. And we're actually gonna try to reuse this style that we had here. So I'm gonna copy the color from here. So we can copy the hex code and use it globally on all buttons, just like this. Then we can try to remember these values. All right. So it was something like this. All right. The border. And let's copy the hex code for the hover state. And for the hover state. And finally we can copy the hex code for the focused or the pressed state. Just like that. Alright, so now we have this button and we could align it to the center. So let's add a div block and let's put the button inside of it, and we're gonna align it to the center. So the div block is gonna be a flex element and we justify to the center just like this. Now the button is gonna have a URL, and that URL is tool.url, and we want the website to open in a new page. So instead of same tab, we want to open it in a new tab. We can even do the same for the screenshot here. So new tab. And now if we refresh, when we click here, we go to sketch.io in a new tab. Same for the screenshots, just like that. Alright, now we could maybe try to do a few things. So maybe we want to have a hover effect on the screenshots, so that when you hover the screenshot, you want it to display a little bit differently. So in hovered, we want to maybe scale the screenshot by maybe 5%. So it's not a lot, but it's enough, maybe even less. So 103%. And we want to add a transition property, and we want to transition to be 0.2 seconds, just like this. So you refresh, and now you see that there's this tiny effect. We could even maybe add a tiny shadow behind the image. So right here. So let's add a shadow, and it's gonna be very light. And maybe 12 pixels. So yeah, now there's a very light shadow behind the screenshots. Perfect. So maybe we want to change the style of this page. We already added the title, maybe we want to add the logo here. So that's something that we can try to do. So let's add an image. Let's add it here for now. And that image is gonna have the URL of tool.logo. and we can give it some radius, so maybe 5 pixels of radius, and we can give it a specific dimension, so maybe 80 pixels by 80 pixels. And we want the image to cover basically the whole area, and we want everything to be centered. Alright, so now we need to maybe place this image next to the title here. So once again, there's a few ways we can do that. Let's add a div block, and let's move the title inside of it as well as the image, and we can make this div block be a flex item, and we want things to be aligned and centered, just like this. And now for this image, we could add a margin like this, and we could also probably reduce the size, so maybe 60 pixels instead, and just like that. Okay, so now we could add some classes to our elements. So this could be tool dash heading, and this one could be tool dash logo, and we can refresh the page, and now we have the logo right here. Now for the description, we could put it inside of so we could stylize this paragraph a little bit. So let's add tool dash description or long description, and we could set a maximum width of maybe 800 pixels, something like that, and we can set the outer margin here to auto so that it's centered, and we can add maybe a background, so maybe 15%, a radius, and maybe we can even increase this margin, just like that. And we could also add an outer margin of maybe at least 10 pixels beneath, and this one too, so this one maybe just 5 pixels. Alright, and here we have it. So we have the link to the website, we have the title of the tool, and the short and long descriptions. We also had a few other elements here. So the other one was the categories field. So that's something that we could populate somewhere. So here we had app builder, website builder. So this is something that we could display on the page. But for now, let's keep it this way. So now we have added our tools, and each tool has its own page, and we can click here to redirect to the page of that specific tool. Now I notice here that there's some space here between the elements, so this is something that we might want to correct. So let's go to the tools page, and here, alright, so it's because we've changed the way the heading 3 elements behave, and we've centered them by default. So let's just take this specific class and align things to the left. And now when we refresh, things are aligned properly. Alright, so here we have our tools. Now we could maybe start working on the showcase tab. So the tools tab simply contains a list of tools. We might also want, as I said, we might want to add the category of the tool, maybe here, maybe some label or tag style. But for the showcase, we want to do the same thing as we've done with the tools page, but this time we want to create a different data model that's going to be the showcase data model. So the process is pretty much the same. So we can call it either projects. Yeah, we could call it project. All right. And now let's add a few fields. So the first field, of course, is the name of the project. It is required, and we want to make it searchable. So we need to index it to make it searchable. All right. Then we can add another field, and this time it's going to be the handle. So it's really the same thing. This time we want to index it, make it unique, and we could also make it searchable. So just like this. And then we have the status. So this could be a drop down. So the first one is a draft, and the second one is published. And the default value is draft, required, and we want to index this field. All right. Then we have maybe the screenshots, or maybe we can add the short description. Required, and we want to make it searchable. Then we have the long description. This one is multi-line. Required and searchable. All right. Then we can add a screenshots array of images, so multiple images. This one is not necessarily required. Then we have maybe the tools. So this could be an array of handles, and we're gonna call it tools. So these are the tools that were used to build this project. So we can save, and maybe we can also add, so we've added the tools element. We could add maybe a categories field if we want, but for now I think it's already enough, and we can, yeah. So we're gonna use the first screenshot as the main image for the tool. Other than that, we're pretty much ready to get started with the project's data model. So we can save. All right, and now we could create, well, we've already created this page, and it's gonna be a list of projects. So we can retrieve the projects from the database, just like this. So the model is projects, and we want to make sure that the projects are published, just like this. Maybe the last 100 projects. Okay, and we store this value inside of a variable, and that variable is projects. Perfect. And now we need to look through that variable and generate the list of projects. So for this list, we're going to use several div elements, and they're going to be aligned as rows. So this one is going to be called project card wrapper, or project cards, and this one is going to be project card. All right, so this one we don't need to add this margin, but we do want it to be a flex element, and this time it's going to be rows, so they're going to be aligned vertically like this, and the rest can stay this way. Now we click on the inner element, so the project card, and this one is going to be a loop, and the loop is going to be from the project variable, and the variable is going to be just project without an S. Alright, now inside, what do we want? We want maybe to start with an image. Alright, maybe we want to add a heading. So this is the title of the project. Okay, and heading 2 for the subtitle, so the description, short description. We also want a link block for the URL, and I just noticed that I did not add a URL field to our database, so let's do that right now. Perfect. Perfect. Let's update the icon. Okay, and let's set the values now. So the image is going to be the screenshot, so project.screenshots. Now this is an array, so we're going to take the first value, so we can do .1. As for the name of the project, it's project.name. Here we have the short description. And here we have project.url. Perfect. So let's add a first project here. So we go here and we can add a new entry. The name of the project is, we could maybe add NoCoder.Space as our first project. So NoCoder.Space, we're gonna publish it. Alright, let's do a long description just like this. For the screenshot, we're just working on it right now, so let's take a tiny screenshot from here. Just like this. Let's add a new file, a new image, and here I see that there's a line, so let's crop it. Perfect, and now we can export this image as a JPEG. And the width is 2000 pixels, and we can save. Alright, let's upload the image here. Now the tools, we need to use the IDs or the handles of the tools we've already added to the database. So this one is sketch-io, and the URL is NoCoder.Space. We haven't linked this URL yet, but we're gonna do it shortly after. Alright, so we already have this element right here. Now I noticed that the tools field is empty, so I think I forgot to press enter. So sketch-io, and now it's added. And now we have the tool right here. Perfect. So we have our first tool, and now we can maybe start stylizing this page. So let's take the product card. Let's remove this, or maybe let's increase this margin, just like this. Let's add a background color, so white 15%. Okay, let's add a radius. Alright, and now for this element, it's going to be a flex element, or maybe a grid element, just like what we've done previously. It's going to have 2 columns, or maybe 3. Let's do just 2 columns. And for the rows, we also want 2 rows. And this image is going to take, it's going to span 2 rows. And then here we want to make these 2 elements inside of a div block. And now we can rearrange everything. Just like this. This should be a flex element, just like that. Here we maybe want to add a margin to the right. Okay, and the heading too. Let's add a few classes first. So this was project card. This will be project card-image. This is going to be project card-name. Whoops. Let's rename it here. This one is going to be project card-description. Okay, and we can align things just like this. This image should have a maximum width, so, or maybe we can set it directly in the columns. So this one should not be 1 FR, it should be maybe 200 pixels, or maybe a little bit more. Alright, 300 pixels. We want to add a tiny gap between the columns, so let's add 15 pixels. Let's make this whole element have a pointer as a cursor. When we hover the element, we want the background to be a tiny bit lighter, just like this. And now we can maybe link the elements. So we've already done that. So let's save and let's see already what this looks like. So let's go to showcase. And now this is the image. So the image should have a maximum width of 100% because we don't want it to go over the size of the element. So 100% is the maximum. Let's refresh. And here we have this screenshot of this project. Now we need to create the individual pages for the different projects, and as we've done, we can use the little trick I showed you. Yeah, so we can add the little trick I showed you for adding the handle of this project directly to this element, so that we can add the action, the click action to it. So let's do that. So let's attach some data to it. It's going to be handle, and we're going to link it to the project dot handle variable. And when this is going to be clicked, we want to retrieve that data. So get data handle from this element, and we want to redirect to a page, and that page is going to be a concatenation between /project dash and the handle of that project, just like that. Okay, so let's see if it works. 404 page, because we haven't created this project, this page yet. We can add some border radius on this image. Five pixels. Okay. Perfect. So now we can create the page for the specific project page. So we can create a new page just like what we've done with the tool page. So we're gonna call it project, and it's gonna be this URL with the asterisk that will contain the handle of the project. All right, we click on it, we drag our header, our footer, the content here, and the title inside. So this is gonna be the content wrapper. This one is, let's remove the margin first. This one is the content inner, and this one is content title. All right. Project, and now we retrieve the project based on the handle. So we go to database, data retriever, and here we want to retrieve a project. We want the handle of the project to be equal to the input, and we want the project to be published. All right, we only want one project, and we connect it to the URL match, and we set the variable project when that value is actually set. Otherwise, we do nothing. Just like this. We add the project variable to the page state, and we can duplicate this element. All right, and if I remember correctly, was it a heading 3 element? So this project doesn't exist. And we want this to render when the element is false, when the variable is false. Which variable? It's the project variable, and this one is when the variable is set. And here we can link this to the name of the project. We can save, we can click on this, and here you see that the name of the project was retrieved from the database and that it's displaying here. If we type in a wrong handle, it's the 404 page that shows up. Alright, so now we can set up this page just like what we've done with the tools page. So we can add, so we have a link button. So visit project, and this is gonna redirect to the project.url page. Then we have, here we had the heading 2 for the name of the project, for the short description, and this one paragraph for the long description. So let's do that. So this is project.short-description, and then we had the paragraph, and this was linked to project.long-description. Alright, now this should be inside of a div block, just like this, and this was a flex element, so let's remove this margin. So this was in a flex element, and it was justified to the center, just like this. Alright, and this had some style, so we're just gonna copy it. I think it was maximum width of 800 pixels, and it was aligned to the center using the auto value for the outer margin left and right. Okay, now we can add the background. So it was, I think, 15%, and was it 5 or 10 pixels of border radius? Let's go here. So 15%, 800 pixels, and 5 pixels of border radius, and here 10 pixels and 10 pixels here. Alright, so let's come here. So it was 10 pixels below, and the rest was already good. As for the heading 2, what did we have? So this had a margin of 20 pixels below. So let's do the same here. You could just select the other class we created, but we want to keep them separate so that if we want to change one, the other one keeps its style. So project-short-description, and this would have 20 pixels of margin below. Okay, we can save, we can refresh the page, double check that everything seems to work. Yes, so now we can add the screenshots. So just like here, we will have a wrapper, a link, and an image inside of the link. So let's do the exact same thing. So this is the wrapper, and inside of it we have a div block, and inside of the div block we have an image. Okay, let's reorder everything just like this. So this is gonna loop through the project.screenshots, and the URL is gonna be screenshot.url, and the image will be the screenshot. Alright, now this is gonna be project-screenshots. Let's go back here, let's double check what we've done here. So we had this margin, and it was a flex element. Alright, so let's do that again. So here the div block, it was a flex element, just like this. Okay, and what else? We had a margin below, I think it was something like this. It was above. Alright, and this was the inner margin of the parent element. Yeah, that's already done. Okay, So now, oh yeah, I'm wondering why this div is small and doesn't take the full space, but I now realize that it's not inside of the content element, the inner element. So we move it just like this, and now it should be working. All right, so now we can maybe select the link, and the link, we're gonna add a new class, and that class is project screenshot link, and let's try to get the same style that we had here. So 10 pixels of margin with these values, 30%. So let's try to find this link here. So the width is 30%, just like this. It was a div block and a margin of 10 pixels, I think. Actually, it's an outer margin. All right. Now notice that I think maybe at some point I made the mistake and I modified the link elements to have this margin. So let's just reset it. Okay. Now for the image, what did we have? So we had this transition, and it was, I think, 3% of scale increase. So let's do the same thing. So transition 0.2 seconds. When it's hovered, it's 103%. All right. And what else? So there was some radius. So this was blog 100% image contain. Yeah, I think we can put it this way. And a radius of 5 pixels. So 5 pixels, block, width of 100%, and everything just like this. Now let's go and refresh this page, and we see here that the background was, the screenshot is displaying properly. Now remember, we also had a shadow on that. So let's click here, go to the link, and did it have a shadow? Yeah, so the image here had a shadow. So these were the values, so 12 pixels of blur and 20% opacity. Alright, now if we refresh, we see that the shadow is showing. Perfect. So let's go to the tools, let's check this. So I think here we had some margin that we don't have here. So let's correct that. So we had 20 pixels above, and that's what we need. So instead of below, it's 20 pixels above, just like that. All right. All right, so now one other thing that we need to do is to maybe show the tools that were used to build this no-code project. So that's a very important section of this page. So we want people to be able to see what can you build with what platform. So let's work on that. So we had the tools field on the project database right here, and this contains the handles of the tools that belong to this of the tool basically that that project has. So let's do, we could add maybe a div block. All right, let's make sure it's inside here. Okay, and what we can do is, here we have the tool card. So this is the card, and we basically want to reuse this element. So we could convert it into a component, but the thing is that we're looping through this variable, so we'll have to do a lot of work to change this. But actually I think it's still the right way to do it, so let's just do it. Okay, so I'm gonna convert this into a component. So this is gonna be tool card, and just like this. So we create the component, and now outside of the component we want to loop. The variable is tools and the inner variable is tool. Okay, just like this. And now when we click on this component, what I want is to add a custom variable here. So you click on the component itself, and that variable is tool. The type is an entry. So we create that variable, and that's what's gonna bring the information to these elements. So we can click on the element here, and let's remove this loop that we had before because we're no longer using it. And now we can click outside, we can click on it again. So now it has a tool entry that we need to click to connect with the tool variable here. So we're trying to inject that variable inside of the component, just like this. I hope this is gonna work. So let's go back to the tools page, and you see that it works. So if we refresh, you see that this card is now reusable. We just need to feed it the tool variable, and it's gonna generate this whole card. And that's gonna be useful because now when we go to the project page, we want to add that component. So component tool card. All right. Now I need to modify the parent element. So let's go get here. What did we have? So in tools, we had this element. It was tools dash wrapper. So let's go here, and we're gonna select the parent, and we're gonna get that class, just like this. And let's remove the inner margin, which is a default property that is added to all div blocks. And now what we need to do is loop through the project.tools, but the project.tools is just an array of handles. So here you see this value is just an array of handles. What we want is to convert these handles into the actual tool. So we want to retrieve the whole information about that tool. So let's do that. Here we have the project variable, and this element contains a tool field, and we want to retrieve the information about that tool field. So we go to, we could loop through the array. So there's really different ways we can do that. Alright, so let's start by getting the element from the entry. So this is the tools element, which is this field. So we get it, and now what we can do is we can loop through the actually what we can do is just get the tools like this. So you can retrieve the tools from the database. The tool needs to have this handle. So the handle is equal to an input, and of course we always make sure that the status of the tool is always published. And now the handle is going to be this array. So it's going to get all the tools that are in this array, and we want maybe 100, and we want to order them. We don't want a specific order, so let's just keep it this way. And now this is going to contain an array of tools, and we want to set this property to be this new array. So we go from an array of handles to an array of entries for each tool. So let's see if this works. The new value is this one, and we need to connect this like this, and we need to connect the entry right here. Alright, so let's hope this is gonna work. Here I did not loop through this, so let's do it. So we want to loop through the project.tools variable, and we're gonna call it tool, and we're gonna link this variable with this property of the component, just like this. Now let's see if this works. We go to showcase, we click on our page, and you see here that we have the tool that was used to build this this project that is displayed right here. All right, so what can we do next? Maybe we need to add a title to this element. So let's add a title here. Maybe we can update this name later on. And here it's a lot clearer what tools were used to build this project. When we click here, we go to the URL of the project, and we can maybe make a test and see if this actually works. So let's say that this project used the bubble.io tool as well. So let's add bubble-io, which is the ID of the other tool, and let's see if it works. Perfect, so we see that bubble.io works right here. Perfect, so we can remove it, just like this. All right, so now there's something that I want to do is to link our domain name to this project with sketch.io. So I've already ordered the domain name, and I'm gonna just prepare this page. So I ordered the domain name using the main Namecheap domain registrar, and here we go to advanced DNS. So this is the admin of my Namecheap account. So let's go to Sketch. Let's go to the settings of the project, and let's configure a domain name. So the domain name is going to be NoCoder.Space, just like this. And now to link it, we need to add these DNS values to the domain names configuration. So let's remove these first. So these are default records. So let's add a new record. This is going to be an A record, and it's going to be this one. So let's copy this IP address. Let's paste it here, and the host is the @value. Perfect. Now CNAME for the www. All right. And here we have a text entry. And the host is sketch-project. All right, we can save these changes. And usually you need to give it some time before these updates in the live store. But we can try maybe to link the domain, and maybe it's gonna work right away. All right, so you need to, it says that this hasn't worked yet, so we need to maybe just wait a little bit before the DNS values, the new ones, propagate everywhere. So we just need to be patient, and we can do that later. So after waiting a few minutes, let's see if we can now connect our domain name with sketch.io. So now you see that it seems to have worked, so we can save. And now when I'm gonna refresh the page, let's see what's gonna happen. So it has redirected us to NoCoder.Space.io, or I mean NoCoder.Space, and you see that the same website is showing up. So yeah, it seems to be working perfectly fine. Now there's a few things that we need to do now to move on, and the first one is to change this button. So we want people to be able to propose or to suggest new tools and even to showcase their own no-code project. So we will need to make a form that will work here, that will allow people to suggest their tools. So let's do that right now. So first I'm gonna change this button. Instead I'm gonna write either maybe add project, or maybe we could change it to something else, something more meaningful. So because we want people to be able to add both tools and project. So maybe it could be add listing. Maybe that's more, or suggest listing. So we can change that in the future. But now let's just change this, make this this page. So that page is gonna be, we're just gonna call it maybe new. So new listing. So maybe something like this is enough. All right, so this is our new listing page. We do just like what we've done in the past. So we add a few blocks, just like this. All right, footer. We need to change these elements to use the classes we've created. Just like this. Just like this. All right. And now we need to maybe add listing. And here we want to first allow the person to either add a tool or a project. So let's add here a block, and inside of it we can add maybe 2 blocks, and we'll have a text inside. So this is gonna say suggest a tool, and maybe we can add an icon, and just like this. So let's try to find a good icon for this. So maybe this wrench. All right, and now we can style it a little bit. So this is gonna be a flex, justify to the center, and a line to the center. And this one is gonna be a flex as well. Right, and we also want to have a margin outside, just like this. Let's add a small background. So let's make this icon much bigger. Alright, and so something like this. So this is going to be a button. Alright, so let's add a class. So new, and then we're going to be maybe type wrapper. and this is gonna be new, and this is a type. And this is gonna be type icon. Alright, now let's duplicate this. And this one is gonna be an actual website or a project. So let's try to find something that will look good. So maybe we could add either a pin, bookmark. Yeah, maybe bookmark is the right icon for this. We could change it later if we want. Suggest a project. Alright, now let's have the hover state. This is going to be 20%. Just like this. Alright, let's save. Let's change this button to redirect to the new page. Let's refresh, let's hit new, and we have now our two buttons. So suggest a tool or suggest a project. And here we can now add two forms, one for the tool and one for the project. So let's add, we could add maybe an entry creator, but yeah, the entry creator is limited. So instead we're gonna add an actual form. Okay. So let's add the form right here, and here we can add maybe the title. So this is gonna be suggest a tool. We can change the way the form displays. Alright, so this looks good. And the form is gonna have a button at the bottom. Well, it's not a link button, it's a form button. Yeah, we can leave it like this. And now inside of this form we want to have a few fields. So let's add a form field. Inside of it we have a label. And inside again we have maybe a text input right here. Alright, so let's select the form field, and maybe we could do it just like this, or maybe something like this. So we want two columns. The first one could be this size, and we want to align the elements to the center. For the label, we want to remove the default color and even the size. Yeah, maybe we can increase the weight here for the label. Alright, so the first one is gonna be the name of the tool. We can also change this text input. Let's remove the border, and we can change the color. Alright, so now it looks like this. Okay. Now we want to center this button, so we could add it inside of a div block, just like this. Let's give it a class. Alright, and we can center things like this. We could add a margin, or actually we don't need a margin. Instead we're gonna add the margin on the form field right away. So something like this. Alright. Now this form we're gonna add the other fields a little bit later, but for now we just want to try something. So we're gonna add a variable to our page, and it's gonna be type. It's gonna be a text variable, and by default it's gonna be an empty string, so just like this. And now this element is gonna show render conditionally when a variable is false and a variable is, or actually when a variable when expression is true. The expression is the type is equal to an empty string, and for this one it's the same thing when an expression is true, and this time it's going to be when the type variable is equal to tool. Alright, and we want to change the type whenever we click on one of these two buttons. So let's add an action on the click action here for this button. So when you click on it, you want to set a variable, it's the type variable, and you want it to be equal to the value true, just like this. Same here for the project. So set a variable, type, and here the value is project. Let's see the result so far. Alright, so now when we click on the suggest a tool button, the type variable switches to tool, and the suggest a tool form shows up. And if we click on suggest a project button, the no form shows up because we haven't created that form yet. So now we can keep going, and maybe we could add a back button so that when we click on either buttons we can go back to the previous state. So let's add maybe, let's duplicate this, and now actually let's just create a div block right here, and we can add a back button. So let's add an icon, and this icon is gonna be an arrow or a left arrow. So let's choose chevron left, and let's add a text, just like this. Let's call it back, and now let's add a tiny bit of styling around these elements. Let's wrap these inside of another block. And this block, this one, the parent one, so maybe we can give it a class. Maybe we could call it breadcrumb, although we're just gonna use it for now for the back button, and here it's gonna be breadcrumb back. So the parent element is gonna be a flex element, just like this, and we align things to the center. And for the actual button, maybe we can add some inner margin, so maybe 8 pixels, just like this. And when the element is hovered, well, let's add for first the radius, so 4 pixels, and when the element is hovered, we can set the background to maybe a very small shade of white, so something like this, and we can set the cursor to pointer, just like this. And now when we hover on the element, we have this background. Now when we click on this element, what we want to do is to basically set the type variable to the default value, which is an empty string. So let's add that action. So we go to set variable, the variable is type, and here it's an empty string, just like this. Alright, and finally this whole div block, let's remove the default margin. This whole div block is gonna be shown only when the page is, when the type is different from the default type. So let's say when variable is true. And maybe we can change the width of this block. So let's take the same width as the form element, so that's 600 pixels. And we can add an external margin, so an outer margin just like this, so auto left and right to center it. And maybe we can add a bottom margin of 10 pixels, just like this. Now finally we can maybe move it below the new type wrapper, although it's not going to change anything, just for the sake of consistency. Now let's refresh the page. Now it's not showing, but when we click on either buttons, we can go back just like this. Perfect. So now we can work on our suggest a tool form. We've already added the name field, and now we need to add the other fields. So when we look at our tools database, data model, we have the name field, and here we have other fields. So let's add, maybe we can set the handle, maybe we can add the status. Maybe for the handle we can automate that so that the user doesn't type a handle themselves. It can be set automatically. The status is also automated, so by default the tool that the person suggests is set as draft, and then we can allow the user to upload a logo, some screenshots, and these descriptions and URLs. So let's do that. So we're gonna go to the form right here. We have a form field, and we're gonna duplicate this field a few times. Alright, and for the second field we're gonna call it logo, or maybe we can call it short description. And the third one is a long description. Now for the long description, it's gonna be a multi-line text input. So we can just go here and search for multi-line text input, and we can add it here. So it's right here, and we can remove the regular text input and only have the multi-line one. All right, and then we have the logo, and we can add then the screenshots. All right, so for the logo, it's gonna be a upload field, so an image upload field. So image upload, so we add it here, and we add it here for the screenshots as well. Now for the logo, it's going to be a single file, and for screenshots it's going to be multiple files. Now for the text input, the name of the field is name for the name field, then short description is short dash description, and these correspond to the handles in the data model. So name, short description, then we have long description, alright, we can add a URL field. So let's duplicate the short description. Let's call it URL, and this is going to be let's keep it as a text field. All right, and we're going to call it URL, just like that. As for the logo, it's going to be logo, and for screenshots, it's screenshots, just like this. Now let's resize these fields. So as we've seen here, the text input now if we go to the image upload field, here it has a default value for the min width of 500 pixels, so we can reset this, and same here, just like this, and we can keep the default value of 100 pixels for the height. Perfect. So let's save and let's see what we have here when we refresh the page. Alright, so the upload fields are showing, as well as the other fields. So maybe we can add some placeholders. So let's add placeholder for these fields. All right. Okay, and now we have this form, and we can add a on submit action, and this will be triggered whenever this form is submitted. So what we can do is we can add here in the other folder in the modules, we have the form data extractor, and we're going to extract the data from this form. And what we need to do is go to the database and make a create request. Now the model is the tools, and the data entry is the data that we need to input inside of the data model. Now we need, as I said previously, we need to set the handle of the tool, and for that what we can do is we can maybe generate the handle based on the name of the tool, and we're going to use the handleize module to generate a handle. So we need to get the name entry from the form entry, and then we handleize it, and then we add basically a handle entry to the data model, and it's this value here. Now we need to also do something else, and that is we need to check that there's no other tool in our data model that has this handle. And that is very important because we don't want to have two tools having the same handle, because the handle needs to be unique because it defines the URL of the tool. So what we need to do is go to the database, make a retrieve request, and now we're going to retrieve from the tools data model, and we need to search for a tool that has this specific handle, and that is this input. You only need one, and now this input is the handle we're using. And now if this handle exists, it means that we need to define a different one. All right. So what we need to do now is to add a condition, and that condition is that the entry exists. So if this entry exists, it means that we need to set a different handle. Alright, otherwise we can move on with this handle. So if the entry exists, we need to maybe generate a random handle. For that, there's different ways we can do that. A simple one is to just use the random generator, and maybe you can generate a number between 0 and, or maybe between 1000 and a big number like this, and this will generate a random handle. Alright, and instead what we're going to do is we're going to concatenate this original value with this number, just like this. So we have 3 inputs. The first one is the handle, the second one is a dash, and the third one is this random number we've added. So what this is going to do is, if there's already a tool that has the handle we're trying to use, we're just going to add to this handle a random value here, so a random big number here, and we're going to use that instead as a handle. That way we're always going to have a random or a unique handle when we create a new tool. Now once that is done, we have all our properties in the data entry, and we can emit the create request. So we extract the data from the database, we get the name, the value of the name of the tool, then we generate the handles from that. We look for any tool that already has that handle, and if that tool exists, we change the handle to a random one. Otherwise we just use that handle right away, and we can create the handle. Now if this is a success, maybe we can set the type variable to success, so maybe success dash tool. Otherwise we can show an error message, and we're going to use the failure message right away, just like this. So now let's create this different so let's create this message. So let's add it here. So this should only be shown when an expression is true, and that expression is that the type equal success tool, right? And we can call it the alright. And we can give it some style. So notice so we can give it a maximum width, center it as usual, give it an inner margin, give it a border radius, and a background. Maybe we can get it from the palette here. So maybe we could just use that color right away. Just like this. Okay, and we can center the text. All right, and now let's refresh this page. Let's see what happens first if we click on the submit button and don't type anything. Alright, so here what happened is that it has submitted the form as a URL, so this is wrong. We should click on the form container and ensure that the method is none. That way it's going to skip the default handling of the form. So let's go back to the page and submit again, and here you see that the request was denied. Now this is the correct behavior, because if we go back to the privileges section or the access control section of the data model tools, you see that in the everyone row, the create checkbox is not checked. This means that people are not allowed to create new tools in the database. Now if we click on this checkbox, people will be able to create new tools, but they will have full control about around this their entries. So they could create a published tool. Now to solve this problem, we need to go to the advanced mode. Now in the advanced mode, the way it works is that we have an input. So this is the entry of this logic, and it has first the request type, and these are the different values. So this is the create, and depending on which value it is, we can go to a different logic, and at the end we need to specify whether the operation is allowed and what's the entry for that operation. So in our case, when we have a create request, what we need to do is we want to allow people to create new requests. What we need to do, however, is to set the status of the request to draft. So we need to force that value to draft. Other than that, the people are allowed to create new tools. So let's add a so let's go to the data processing folder, and under entry we need to set an entry property, and that value is the property is status and the value is draft. Now this is, here we have the entry that the user has created. So this is the default, the entry that the user is trying to create, and we're gonna modify it right here. So this is the entry, and the same entry we need to output it here in the output. Now here we have a condition, and that condition is whether the user is logged in, and if the user is logged in, then we do this, otherwise the operation is not allowed. So what we need to do now is to ensure that even when the user is not logged in, we want to allow the create operation. So let's go here for the case 4, which is the create case, and we need to skip this. So we just directly allow the operation, and we set the entry here, and we add of course the draft value right here. All right, so what next? I think it's okay right now for the setup right here. It might look complicated, but it's very easy to use. You just need to check which request we're trying to do, and we have here the entry that the user is either viewing or trying to edit. We have the new entry, so when the user is trying to edit the entry, so this is the original one, this is the one that the user is trying to modify, the new entry, and here whether the user is logged in or not. And if the user is logged in, we also have access to the entry of that user in the user database. So for now it's okay, we click save, and now if we click submit, let's see what happened. So now you see it's a different error. So it's the operation is allowed, but the error is that the name field is required this short description field is required, and so on. So these are empty fields, and we need to type some values. So let's do a test, and let's type sketch.io. I know we've already added this tool, but let's see what's gonna happen. All right, let's type something random. Then we can maybe upload a logo. So we can drag this right here. Or actually we need to browse the file like this. And for screenshots, let's keep it empty. So let's see what's happened when we submit this field now. So here it says that the handle field is required. This means that the handle field was not set for some reason. So let's look into the submit here form, and here we are supposed to add, so we're supposed to add the handle property to the entry, but we forgot to link it here. So let's connect the entry we're trying to add the handle field to, and now this entry is fed into the create request. So now it should work. So let's refresh because we've edited this page, and let's start again. All right. We upload the logo again, and let's see if the tool is submitted. So now we see that the tool was successfully submitted. All right, so now let's go to our data model and let's view the entries in that data model. And here we see that this was a success. So a new entry has been added, and you see that here the handle was set with a random value. The reason is that it has our code, or our NoCode, has handleized the name, and this was the handle that was supposed to be used, but this handle already exists. This needs to be unique, so it has appended this random number here after the handle. All right, the status is draft, and we have our image right here. Now we need to work on the categories at some point. We can do that maybe later, but for now we see that we've been able to add a new entry into the data model. Now if we go to the tools list, you see that the tool is not showing up, and the reason is that it's in draft. So we can manually now publish this tool, so people submit tools in draft, and then we can publish them just like this. So now the tool is published, and when we refresh this page, the tool is now added to the page. Now when we click on it, you see that the ID, the handle of the tool is right here, and that everything works as expected. Alright, so let's now work on the last thing we forgot to do, and that is add a category input right here. So for the categories field, there's again different ways we can do that, and we're gonna see maybe one way we can add a field where people can select which categories this tool belongs to. So first, let's duplicate the maybe the long description field. So it's this one, and this time it's gonna call it categories. Alright, we can remove this multi-line text field, and instead we're gonna add a div block. Alright, now inside of this div block, let's remove the default margins. Inside of this div block, we can add a div text. Alright, just like this. Now this div text is gonna be a specific category. So let's look here at some categories we had set previously. So we had app builder, website builder. So let's start with these two. All right, so this one is going to be website builder. All right, and let's give it some style. So maybe an inner margin. We can maybe decrease the size, increase the weight, maybe decrease the size even more, and we can give it a background color, so something very light, something like this. All right, and I can even increase the weight even more. All right, now let's select the parent element, and this time it's going to be a flex element, and we want the items inside of this flex element to wrap, meaning that if there's too many of them, they can spread into a new line. So we can select this, and we can center everything vertically. All right, so this element, so the category, we should maybe use the pointer cursor, and now I'm just gonna add more margin like this. All right, just like this, and this looks fine. Okay, so now I can duplicate this one, and the second one is going to be app builder, and we can add more in the future, but for now we're going to keep it this way. And we can add a outer margin of, let's say, 5 pixels and 5 pixels to the bottom. All right, I'm going to create a class here. We're going to call it category item, or categories field item, and the parent is going to be categories field. All right, now this little element, we're just going to remove it and duplicate this again so that it uses the class we've just created. All right, so now we have two different categories. I'm gonna add another category, and this time is gonna call it category field item selected, and this time I'm gonna set the background color to a lighter color. So this time we know that this one is selected. All right, perfect. So now we need to add some logic so that people can click on these buttons and they can select which categories this tool belongs to. All right, so the way we can do that, maybe we can turn this into a component so that we can just duplicate the component and make this reusable. All right, so I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna remove this item selected class, and I'm gonna convert this into a component. So this is gonna be category item. So now this is a component, and when I double click on it, I can connect this content property to the component's properties, and the property is gonna be category, just like this. And now I can remove the second one once again, and I can duplicate this this component, and this time we can set the category outside, and we're gonna call it app builder. All right, now let's double click on the component, and we're gonna add a click action. So whenever this item is clicked, we can toggle a class. So let's go to here, and what we can do is add or remove a class depending if the element is clicked right now. So let's go to has class, and let's do an add class or a remove class. Alright, now the class that we've set is this one, item selected. So let's copy the class handle and let's go back to the click action. So if the element has the class, then we need to remove it, otherwise we need to add it. This way we can toggle through the class. So we connect everything. Alright, now if the item has the class, then we remove the class. If the item doesn't have the class, we add the class. Just like this. Alright, now let's refresh the page. And now let's see what happens when we click on them. So you see you're now able to select categories. And the last step is to actually combine the list of categories and add them to the entry that we're adding to the database. So here in the form, we had a submit action, and here when we extract data from the form, it's extracting data from the regular fields, but it's unable to extract data from these elements. So what we need to do is to basically extract those categories. Alright, and for that, and we need to add a new entry to a new property to our entry, and that property is the categories property. The entry is the one we're working on, which is the extracted form data. Alright, and now here we need to extract the list of categories. Alright, so what we can do is we can search through this element. We can search. So this element has a class which is categories field. So categories field. And what we need to do, and the categories that are selected have this class. So categories field item selected. So what we can do is to find the elements in this form that have that specific class. So we find element by class. The class is categories field item selected, and the scope is this element's children. So we're searching through the elements in the form, and we're retrieving all the elements that have this class. Alright, so we connect this like this, and now for each one of these elements we want to generate basically an array, and for that let's see what we can do. So what we can do is probably we can loop through these elements. Alright, so program flow, and we can do an element loop just like this. So we loop through this list of elements, and for each one of them we want to add the element handle inside of this array. So here we can add a value. The type of the value is an array of texts, and at first it's going to be an empty array. So we want it to have 0 entries by default. So we want it to have 0 elements by default, and then we're gonna, for each one of the elements, for each one of the categories, we want to add a new element. So we do this element loop, and inside of the loop what we want to do is to retrieve the text value of the element. So element operations get text, so we're gonna get the text from the element, and that is website builder or app builder. and we want to handleize that value. So text handleize. So now we have the handle of that category. So website builder is going to become website-builder. And now for this handleized value, what we want to do is to add it to the array. So push element. So the array it's this one, and this same array is going to be the categories property. All right. So let's repeat what we have just done. So here previously we have set the handle value of our new tool. Then what we do here is that we are creating an empty array, and that array is going to be the categories array. And for each one of the elements in this element, which is the form element that has this class, so categories, field, item selected, so the selected categories, we want to loop through them, and inside of the loop we want to retrieve the text of that element, and we want to handleize it, and then we want to add it to the categories array. All right, and once the loop ends, we want to set the categories property of the input for the create request, so the data entry, and we push into that property, we push the array that we have just built here, and then we can send the request. All right, so let's save, and let's see if this is gonna work now. So let's remove this test we've done. All right, and now let's try again. Maybe I can add another, I'm gonna add a few other categories. So let's duplicate this a little bit. So we can add maybe automation. So automation tools. Another one could be analytics. And then maybe we can do marketing. So marketing tools. So we have already 5 categories, and we can see here when we refresh the page, suggest a tool. Let's select, for example, automation, analytics, and website builder, and let's create a sample entry. So we submit. So the tool was successfully submitted, and now when we click here in the tools section, we see that here the categories was undefined. So this means that there's an error here. All right, so let's try to debug this problem. So here I just noticed that I forgot to connect this last module, so push element, so this never happened. Let's just keep on double checking that everything is normal. So here we set the value, it's an array of text, it has 0 values to begin with, and we set the property, the categories property, and we give it this value here. All right. So we can save, and let's try again. So let's just type in random stuff and let's submit. Okay, so now we can view the list of tools, and now we see that it's working perfectly fine. So the categories were properly added to our database, and the entry was added. If we want, we can enable it by changing the status of this entry from draft to published. So now we can see that the entry was properly added, and that we have the categories that the user has selected in here. Perfect. So the next step now is to do the same thing, but with the projects category, with the projects data model. So first, let's just delete these 2 sample entries we created, and let's go to projects. Actually, we're gonna duplicate this whole form and just like this, duplicate. And now we need to do suggest a project. Now we need to change a few things. So here, when type is project, and then what do we have? Let's change these placeholders. So this one is going to be NoCoder.Space. NoCoder.Space. A platform with no-code tools and resources. All right. So compare and discover no-code tools and projects. No-code tools, resources, and projects. All right. Now we also have the logo. Let's double check here in the fields. So we do have screenshots. We don't have logo. We have short and long description, and we have the tools here. So tools is going to be the same thing as categories. So this is going to be tools, or actually tools used. And here we can remove the logo field right here. All right. And now what we can do is, so we have name, handle. The handle is automatic as we've done previously. Same for status, short description, long description, screenshots, URL, and then we have the tools field. Now this is going to be a field that allows the user to select which tools, which no-code tools were used to build this project. All right. So for that, maybe we can start by removing this field. All right, we can add a div block, and inside of this div block, we need to add maybe a text input. All right, so this is going to be our search field for finding tools. So maybe placeholder. So type a tool name. Then maybe we could add a search icon, although it's not really necessary. So let's add a search icon. All right. And then we are going to add a div block here. And this is going to contain the list of tools that correspond to this query. All right. So inside we're going to add maybe sketch.io. This is a placeholder. Now this is gonna be a tool search. All right. Then here we have tool search input, then tool search icon, tool search results, and this one is tool search results, and then maybe we can do item or just result without an S. All right, and now let's add some styling. So this is going to be a flex, or we don't need it to be flex. We can just remove this margin. This is going to be positioned absolutely. So in position, we do absolute. And this text input is going to have a full width. So instead of giving it a full width, we can just set the parent as a flex element, just like this. All right, and this item is going to be positioned to the right at 0. For that, we need to set the parent as a relative, just like that. So now we select the icon, so maybe 4 pixels, and top maybe 5 pixels. All right, now we select the results, and the results are going to be absolute as well, just like this. Top can be 100%, just like this, and we can give it a z index of a high value, and then we can give it a width of 100%. All right, and we can give it a background, so maybe something like this, so 80%. All right, so this is going to be the results of the search, and then for each element in the search we want to display it right here. So let's remove this inner margin and add it instead directly to the element here. So something like this. All right. All right. Okay. Now this is gonna be hidden by default. So let's select the parent element here, tool search. And this is gonna be a, we're gonna convert it into a reusable component just to make things clearer and separated. So this is gonna be a separate component. We're gonna call it tool search. All right, so when we double click on it, we have access to it. Let's reduce the size of this icon, and let's change its opacity. So 50%, and let's reposition it by adding more margin to the top. All right. All right, so here we have the div text, and here we have the text input. And what we want to do is whenever this element changes, so whenever someone types a value into the text input, we can search through the database, so retrieve request. And what we want is to retrieve from the tools, the list of tools. We want to search based on what the user has typed. And we want to, of course, select only the element with the status is published. All right. And maybe we want a maximum of 20 entries. So just like this. So now we need to retrieve the value of the search field. So get a value, and we're going to use that value to search for the entries. All right. And then we need to set a variable, and that variable is going to be tool search results. All right, and the value is the entries that we have just retrieved. All right. Now by default, that variable is going to be false. So yes, no, and it's going to be false. And as I said, when we search, when we type something here, it's going to retrieve the variable. It's going to retrieve the new the tools that correspond to the search and store them into this variable. All right. So now here in the div text, we want to loop through that variable. All right. And we're going to call the new variable entry or tool. And then we want to link this field to that variable. So tool dot name, just like this. Now let's make this pointer. Okay. So now we can save, and when we refresh the page, so here we have what we have so far. When we type something, normally nothing is going to happen, but it should make the search. Now what we need to do here is to, now I'm going to change this, and instead of making the search while the field changes, instead we're going to use the icon that we created. So I'm just going to copy and move all of these modules from here into this icon. So let's give first a cursor for that icon, and when that icon is clicked, that's when we need to make the database search. So for that, we need to make a retrieve request. Tools, gonna get maybe 20 items. Search field input, and the status needs to be published. All right. Perfect. Now we need to retrieve the. We need to find an element by class, and that class is going to be, I'm going to copy it later, but we need to retrieve the text input, and then what we're going to do is to get the value from that text input, and that's the value for our search. And once that is done, that's when we need to set the variable. So when this succeeds, and we're just for the sake of debugging, we're gonna show this as a message. All right, so now I need to get the class of the text input. So the class is tool search input. So tool search input. So let's copy the handle here. And now this is the field we're trying to retrieve. All right, so let's click save, and I'm gonna remove what we've done here on the change action. So let's delete this, and let's try again. So let's type something random. Let's click on search. So there's nothing, which is exactly what we wanted. And let's type sketch.io. And apparently it's still not working. All right, so what do we need to do? First here, let's double check. We're looping through this element, through this array, and we're getting the tool variable, and that variable is showing here in the list of elements. Okay, now let's go to our tools database. Let's ensure that the name is indexed and searchable. This is very important because we want to search by name. Okay, then let's select the parent element here. Let's add a tiny bit of styling. Alright, just like this. Alright. So now, as I said, when we click on this icon, it is supposed to work, but it isn't. So when we click on the icon, we're making this request. So what I'm gonna do is connect this module like this, and here I'm gonna see what's the value that we're searching for, just double checking that it works. So normally now it's showing sketch.io for our search. So far it is working. Now when we do the retrieve request, this is where things stop working. So the entries array is supposed to be connected here, but for some reason it isn't working. So we are doing a search by term, and the status must be published. All right. Now when we refresh, we can type in, for example, sketch, and you see that the result is here. So now the next step is maybe we can make this clickable. So when you click on this, it adds sketch.io as a selected tool. So we double click on here. Maybe we're gonna adjust these margins like this and add a margin on the wrapping element. Alright, now this element should only be shown when a variable is true, and that variable is the tool search results. Alright, and when one of these elements is clicked, we need to add some logic, and that is going to be a click element. We're also gonna attach some data to this element, and that data is going to be handle, and we're going to link it to the tool.handle variable. So the tool, it's this variable that we're looping through. We're going to attach the handle of that tool to the handle data of this element. Then we're going to expose this click action, and we're going to add it to click tool item clicked. All right, and then we can add a tiny bit of styling when the element is hovered, and just like this. Okay, so let's refresh. Let's type in a tool name, and now you can see that you can hover it like this. Now if we do something like IO, you see that there are two different tools. Okay, now let's add the logic. Well, actually I can maybe add a X button so that we can close this this area here. So that is very easy to do. So inside here we're gonna add an icon. Okay, it's gonna be a times icon, and we're gonna give it a class. So tool search dash close. Okay, it's gonna be positioned absolutely, and we're gonna align it to the right, so 5 pixels and 5 pixels from the top, and we can give it some inner margin. Something like this, and I'm actually gonna remove this that space because the inner margin is gonna act as a spacer, and we can give it a pointer value. All right. And now when this is clicked, what we do is we set a variable, and the value is false. So checkbox, a boolean, and we do it like this. Alright, so we refresh, we type in IO, and here we can close this search box. Alright, so now we just need to add the logic for these two buttons. So when an element is clicked, as I said, we exposed here this action. So when we click on the component, the tool item clicked action is exposed right here. So what do we need to do? Well, first I'm gonna hide this by default because it's annoying when you're working on it. So I'm gonna go to selected element, and maybe we can hide it like this, and when the element is rendered we can show it by default. So show element, maybe this is gonna work, let's see. So let's refresh. Alright, so it's still hidden. So this won't work. So let's remove this and let's reset this the value of display that we added there. So maybe instead let's just ignore this for now, and we're gonna add a div block below. So let's add it here. I'm gonna add two div blocks, one that is gonna contain the whole search and results and selected elements field like this, and the other one is just gonna hold the list of tools that were selected. Okay, so this one is gonna contain the list of tools that are selected. And for that, we can add maybe a new state variable. So we're gonna call it selected tools, just like this. And when a tool is clicked, what we want to do is add that element to the variable. So we get the data, the handle value from this element, and we add it. Actually, instead of just the handle, maybe we should add yeah, for now maybe we can, let's remove this instead. Instead of handle, we're gonna call it tool. Alright, and we're gonna push this tool inside of the array. Now what the array is the variable selected tools, and we need to set that variable later on. And here we have a value. It's going to be an empty array. Okay, so this is an empty array, and we need to check if this value is set or not. So if the value exists, so if this is an array, we continue here. Otherwise, we go here. So this is to create an array, because by default, as we've set in the page state, the variable is set to false. Here we're trying to add an entry to an array, so we need to create the array first. And then we resave the value of the array right here. Perfect. So now we added the tool to the array, and we've set the selected tools value here. Okay, so now previously we have set this to the handle. Let's remove this and let's connect this instead to tool, and we connect this directly to the tool variable. All right, so we can exit this. We can select here the div block. So this is going to contain the list of tools that we have selected. So let's add a text element inside. Just like this. Okay, and this is going to be a loop through the selected tools variable, and each one of them is going to have the value tool. It's going to be a loop through the tool, and we're going to link this to the variable tool.name, and actually this is going to be wrapped inside of a div block. All right, and we're going to remove this and put it in the div block instead. And the reason is that we also want to add an X icon to be able to remove that tool from the selected tools. All right. So this is going to be maybe a trash icon. We can set the opacity to something very light, and the size as well. And now this element is going to be a flex element. Just like this. Alright, so right, it's very annoying that we have this here, so let's just remove this while we work on our selected tools. Now let's downsize this, and let's add maybe some inner margin. Something like this. All right, so this is the selected tools, so we're looping through them, and now we're gonna add maybe an action on this button. So when we click on the trash icon, we want to remove that tool from the selected tools. All right, so here we add a click action. So when we click on that trash icon, what do we want to do? First, we need to find which tool we're working on, and for that we just get the parent of the trash icon, and that is it's this element, so the parent of the trash icon. Now this element, we're gonna add a handle data entry to it, and we're gonna connect it to the tool dot handle. Okay, so now this element has a data entry that is tool.handle. Actually, we don't need to go to the parent. We can remove this. We can directly add that data entry to the trash icon. So handle, and we connect it to tool.handle. And when we click on it, we don't need to get the parent. We just need to retrieve the data handle from the trash icon. And now what we need to do is to filter out we need to filter out the array that is called selected tools, and we need to remove this tool from this array. So we know that we need to resave it again. And now this value, this array needs to be filtered out. That's what we're going to do here. Actually, instead of setting it, maybe we can create a new array, an empty one, just like this. And we're gonna loop through this array. So in program flow, array loop, so we loop through this array, and for each entry we can push that element into the empty array, and the condition is that the handle of this entry is different from the handle of the element we're trying to delete. All right, so let's get the property handle from this element, and let's compare it with the trash icon handle. And when they're not equal, we can push this element inside of our empty array, and at the end we set this new array as the new selected tools array. So let's recap. So basically our trash icon has a data field that is called handle, and it's the handle of the entry or the tool that we're trying to delete. Now what we do is we need to update this variable selected tools, so we get its value, we loop through this value, and for each one of them we check, is this value different from this handle? If it is, it means that we need to keep it, because we just need to delete the tool that has this handle. Now when this tool is found, we just skip it, so we do nothing, and otherwise we add those tools to the new array. So this is an empty array, we keep adding elements to it, and once that is done, we can set the new variable selected tools with the list of tools except the one that we're trying to delete. All right, so let's save and let's refresh. So let's type in IO. Yeah, I need to undo what I've done here. So here I've forced hiding this. Let's show it again. So we can refresh the page and try again. So let's search for IO, and when we click on the tools, you can see that they add here to the list of tools. But the issue we have is that if we click on the same tool twice, it adds the same tool multiple times. And the second issue is that we should maybe automatically close this list of results whenever we click on a tool. So let's work on that. First, we can modify the click action, and automatically close the list, the results, whenever we click on an item. So it's the same action as the close icon, so we need to set this variable to false. So we just do the same thing here. So when everything is done, we set a variable, and the new value is false. So it's a boolean, just like this, and this way it's going to close the list. Alright, so this was the first thing we wanted to do. Let's give it a try. Perfect. Now the second step is that we want to avoid adding the same tool multiple times in the list. So for that we go back here, and in here we added this push value. So what we need to do is check if this element is already in the list or not. So let's do that. So in the array modules, we can, there's the contain module, but this won't work because the list of tools is actually it contains entries. It doesn't contain the handles of the tools, so this won't work because this works for comparing, for searching for specific text inputs. It doesn't work for entries, so this won't work. So let's see what we can do instead. So we could do maybe an array loop and try to find that element manually. So we can loop through the selected elements, just like this. And for each one of them, we can compare the handle of this tool with the handle of the tool we're trying to add. So we get entry property, handle. So we get the handle of this tool in the array, and we get the handle of the tool we're trying to add. And here we need to make a comparison. So if both are the same, it means that the tool is already in our list. Alright? Otherwise we just keep on going. Alright, so here we do the array loop. Once the loop ends, we need to either go to push the element, to add the element here, or to just skip this whole step if we found the element. So the way we can do that is we can add a condition. By default, the condition is true. So by default, we go through the next step. But if here both elements match, meaning that we found that the element is already in the list, then we set a different value for the condition. So this time the value is going to be false, and instead of going through this direction, it's going to go into the otherwise flow. And for that, we're just gonna go back and skip this step. Alright, so let's give this a try. So we save, we refresh the page, and we type in IO, we add bubble, search again, add bubble, and here you see that it doesn't work. If we search again and add sketch, sketch gets added properly. Now let's try the delete button. As you can see, we were able to delete sketch and add it again, delete bubble and add it again. Alright, so now the only things we need to do is correct some styling things. So I'm just gonna click on this block here, and something we forgot to do is to set a maximum height. And the reason is that if this list grows, we need to set a maximum height so that it doesn't overgrow the page. So we just set a maximum height of maybe 100 pixels. Actually, this is the min height, so we need to set the maximum height of 100 pixels. or maybe 140 pixels. All right, and we can set the overflow to auto, so that if necessary, if it grows too much, the scroll bars will show automatically. All right, and then the other thing we need to do is to change the way the list of tools is displayed. So let's hide this for the moment, and let's select this tool and change the way it looks. So we add a background, our usual border radius. All right, and now maybe we can add an inner margin. So we're gonna increase it to 6. And maybe we can select the parent element and set it as a flex element, and make the items wrap just like this. All right, and now we can change the cursor to this, for this, to default, and we can add a margin next to the icon. So something like this. All right, perfect. So let's refresh the page once again and type in sketch. Yeah, so I forgot to unhide the list of results. And now we can add tools just like this. All right, I forgot to add a margin. So let's add a 5 pixels margin, just like this. Perfect, and now it's working perfectly fine. We can delete elements and we can add them again. Perfect. So we've added this tools section, and now we are able to select tools and add them to the list here. But one step is left, and it is to add the list of selected tools to our database when we try to save this new project. So for that, we select the form container, and here we remember that we had this categories field that we tried to add. Now what we're gonna do is, here we have a loop through the selected tools variable, and what we're gonna do is just use that variable right away. So we can remove this, we can get that variable, so selected tools, and we're going to loop through the elements of that variable, so array loop, and for each one of them we want to add, we want to first get the handle of that element, of that tool, and push it into the array. And once the loop ends, we can set this properly. So let's clean up our previous flow. And here, this is the tools variable or property, and this is the array that we're pushing the list of tools into, and we're using this array to set the list of tools that this project belongs to. Now the request is on the project's data model, and once it's done, we do a success project we show the success project message. Perfect, so we can save and we can duplicate this element, this notice. We can move it down here, although it won't have any effect. So the project was successfully submitted. Alright, so here we have the list of projects, and let's try to add a new one. Alright, so we'll refresh the page. Here we have the previous suggest a tool form. We go back and here we have the suggest a project form, and let's add one for an example. And let's add both sketch and bubble, just like this. And let's add a screenshot, just like this. Alright, so we submit, and of course the request is denied because we forgot to set up the permissions, the access control for the project's data model. So we go to the advanced mode, and once again here what we do is when we are in the create case, so case number 4, we have a special logic that we want to do. So we allow the creation of this entry. However, we set the property, the status property, to draft. So this is the entry, and we set status to draft. Alright, and it should be the same here, and that's what we've done previously. Alright, so now let's click on the submit button once again, and now it seems to have worked, but of course the message isn't showing, and the reason is that this shows conditionally, but we forgot to change this to success-project. Alright, now if we look at the database, it should have worked, and we see that it works. So here we have the list of tools that this project uses, the URL, description, short description, status is draft by default, and the rest is working perfectly fine. So let's change this to published, and let's see in our showcase. And here you see that the project was added and it shows up perfectly fine here. So there's some styling issue that we need to solve here. Very easy to do, but globally the whole platform is set up and it's working, and we've seen how to create a data model, two data models that contain the list of tools, but also the list of projects that use those tools. If we go to showcase example, you see that we even retrieve the tools based on the handles of those tools and show them in the project page. We added these forms. We even had to create some custom fields for our UI. We also added a search box just like this, which is great, and we also have an upload field right here. So this was how to build a NoCoder.Space platform, so a directory of no-code tools and projects, and this is a real-life project, and I'm not going to record the next steps, but I'm going to keep on working on this platform and add new and more features into it. So thank you for listening.